Hey everybody, welcome to a new little series we have here where we're going to be doing audio reviews of certain games to kind of talk about the overall soundscape of the game. We already do the video essays, and these are kind of similar to that, except this is a little bit more kind of just like strictly theory driven and the grand scheme game audio mix and such, and kind of like different strategies when you're having multiple sounds together. We'll probably comment on different sounds and how good they are and all that kind of stuff, but for this first video we are going to be playing Thomas Was Alone. I've already played a little bit into the game. There will probably be some spoilers, as far as spoilers can really go in this game, but basically we're just going to show different areas of the game, and I'm going to be talking about different parts of Thomas Was Alone. So we're actually going to go to scenario select, and we're going to spawn at 1-1, which is the very first stage. One of the best parts about Thomas Was Alone was just how minimal they were able to make this game. There's really not that much going on to it. It tells you all of the controls right off the bat.
Was alone. Wow. A weird first thought to have.
They have a voice actor that's speaking and narrating to us, and they also just have this little box.
Thomas decided to start listing his observations for posterity. 1. The whole alone thing. 2. Portals. They led somewhere. He'd yet to work out where. 3. Falling. Thomas was absolutely fantastic at falling. He was almost as good at falling as he was at observing.
So as we can hear in Thomas Was Alone, we have Thomas here, and he has a jump sound. We also have some music in the background. Music's not bad. There's going to be some cool stuff that we're going to hear later throughout the soundtrack. And yeah, this is basically most of the sounds that we're going to hear in the game. The jump sound, we have a little land sound, then the narrator, and all of these combine into the entire soundscape. I kind of feel like the jumping sound and the landing sound could be a little bit more detailed. I feel like they're just a little bit bland, but also at the same time I think that there's not really much else it needs at the same time. I want something bigger, but there's sort of a strategy that I like to keep in mind when I'm thinking about game audio, which is to not really overcomplicate the simple sounds. The sounds that you're going to be making all the time, or the actions that the player are going to be making all the time, the sounds that are tied to those maybe shouldn't be too crazy all the time. Otherwise, they're just going to get maybe too repetitive. So if you can kind of make those sounds a little bit more subtle, I feel like that's the way to go. And then make the sounds that a player needs to earn a lot more satisfying, like getting an achievement or getting an upgrade on a weapon or something, making those a lot more powerful and a lot more exciting. I feel like that kind of creates a emotional dynamic between the basic sounds, like just hitting a button to jump, versus actually earning something.
This all seemed a little dangerous. The world was not to be trusted. It was unstable, and it seemed to Thomas that it could let him down at any moment. He was starting to suspect it might even be doing so on purpose.
Kind of wish that these falling blocks had some sound to it. My general rule of thumb when it comes to game audio is to just add as much attention to detail as you can to anything. Everything that moves, every animation, everything should have some sort of sound. So those blocks falling absolutely should have something, in my mind.
Thomas wondered whether the portals were actually taking him anywhere. He felt like he was making progress, but there wasn't really any way to know. He seemed to be moving predominantly up and to the right, which might, or might not, be important. Something about the boiling, toxic, glowing water intimidated Thomas. He didn't like it. He certainly didn't want to swim in it. He made another mental note. 4. Water. Not good. To be avoided.
So when you fall into the water, as an example, it does kind of have a nice sound. I think that a lot of these sounds could just use like a little bit more of something. Just using like a simple jump sound could be like a little bit more fulfilling in my mind. Maybe create something from the real world into this. I'm not sure what I would need specifically, but like just using a single synthesizer for a lot of these sounds, and as you'll hear, all of the sounds can get a little bit one-dimensional over time. We get a nice sound that plays for that checkpoint, but it's also it's still a synth sound, so it kind of, unfortunately, doesn't really flesh out the soundscape as much as I would like. I will say the narrator driving the story and also just the very simplistic audio kind of does cater a lot to what Thomas Was Alone is all about. It's just a perfect example of minimal art and gameplay with really solid audio. Like, I mean, it's not like I said, I do want to hear some more attention to detail in certain areas, but ultimately the music is excellent. The narration quality is excellent as well. The performance of it is beautiful. There's so many games out there that just cannot perform a voiceover like that well. And all around, like, I think the voiceover and the music are kind of what make this game really, really great. A game like this can be built very, very easily in Unity, and I'm pretty sure this was made in Unity.
The loneliness was getting to Thomas. No amount of observation or obsessive note-taking could combat that.
A game like this is very, very easy to make in Unity, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just used the basic physics engine from Unity and probably even used the most basic shapes with just different material shaders on this. It's kind of crazy to think that like the most diversity absolutely comes through the narration and the music. If there was no narration and if there was no music in this game, it would be pretty empty, I feel like. I feel like this game wouldn't have a whole lot of depth. But towards the end of this game, you start to feel like an emotional connection to these characters.
Thomas had a new theory. The world was training him. He could feel himself getting smarter. There was the mental list to consider. Over the minutes and seconds since his spontaneous generation, he'd become a pretty skilled jumper. He was evolving. He just wished he had someone to share it with.
By the end of this game, you really feel like you are connected to Thomas. And as we will see very shortly, Thomas does eventually get a friend.
Chris took an immediate and deep dislike to the skinny red rectangle. Who the hell did this Thomas think he was?
So yeah, then we add another character. I'm actually going to turn on the music volume just so that we can actually hear the jumping sounds. And then if we switch to Thomas, we can hear that his is a little bit higher pitched. And I think it's because Chris doesn't really jump as high as Thomas does. And I think he moves a little bit slower as well. Yeah, just a tiny bit slower than Thomas. And now as you're seeing, like we have, it's a lower pitch. And then later in the game, we're going to see that there's even more characters that have their own different pitches for the sounds. And they're really to flesh out the different characters just through the sounds and the voiceover telling a story. And while there is text in the bottom left corner, the VO is really kind of what sells the emotion on these characters, I feel like.
Chris had been doing fine. He wasn't the highest jumper, but he'd held his own. He'd even been graceful at times. Well, not technically graceful, probably the wrong word, but you know, fine. There was that skinny little runt leaping about like he owned the place.
The general mix between the music and sounds, the music is definitely a little bit too loud. I would definitely prefer if the music was set to default just like a couple decibels louder, or quieter rather. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip to later in the game actually here. Oh, look at that. There's actually more boxes that we can choose from. We got little buttons here. We got all these different characters here. We got, I believe this is Claire. She can float in water. We can hear her jump sound versus Thomas's. This one, this guy versus this guy. We can hear that they all have a different jump sound. Claire is the heaviest, so she has a much lower sound. Thomas is the medium one. His is kind of in the middle ground. And actually, I forget this guy's name, but he's a little bit, he is a little bit lower than Thomas. Then Chris is a little bit lower than Claire's. It's just really interesting how they're able to build that kind of personality in that way.
James had always been different. And not different in that kooky, OMG, you've totally got to meet my mate James, he's literally insane kind of way.
The human voice is by far the most dynamic instrument in the world. If you can properly execute a voice line and voice acting in a game, and you can make it work and you have the money to do it, or the resources to do it, or the talent to do it, then you should absolutely take that chance and go for it. It will take a lot more work and it will probably be a lot more difficult, but overall, it is 100% worth it to do.
He'd not seen anyone else in a long time. Not since getting eaten by that cloudy, pixely thing. He turned up here in some kind of cage.
Just imagine how simple this game is to make. I mean, it's just boxes. There's not even really a whole lot of art in this game. But the voiceover is able to tell such an amazing story in this game. And it's really not anything too complex. It's just a really, really solid performance by the voice actor. And, I mean, just the vision of this game was kept to a very minimal level. Some games just get a little bit too ambitious sometimes, and they have crazy art, and they have crazy gameplay mechanics, and a crazy idea with a crazy story. But all that they really need to do is just record some audio and, like, figure out how to execute on that. And to be honest, I feel like it would save a lot of money and a lot of time. The entire game for Thomas Was Alone was probably created without sound, and it was probably added after the fact. And I don't recommend that for anybody to do when they're working on any games. I always recommend getting audio in at the very beginning. But the reason I bring up that point is because this game was really, really simple to make, and the audio is strictly a supporting role when you're working on sounds for a game. It's completely meant to be additive to the experience of the game. Sound design will elevate the experience for the player. But I think that Thomas Was Alone is one of the few examples where sound actually kind of carries the experience or elevates it to a point where it's getting carried. Another thing that's really nice about this game is that the menus have different volumes for the VO, the FX, and the music. I don't think I'd be able to actually do this recording if I didn't have the option to do this, because that's one thing about this game is that all these three different areas are not very equally mixed. The music is way too loud overall in the game, and it's hard to hear a lot of the feedback sounds. Fortunately, the game is simple, so it doesn't affect any of the game design from the audio supporting the sound design. It sounds like there's some glitchiness going on in the music. Like, it seems like the music is very, the music feels like it's almost like stacking on top of each other. It sounds a little bit messy at times, but that actually might just be the chaotic nature of the game. Yeah, you can definitely hear that the music is playing on top of each other. It's definitely not a great look for the audio design, but listen to how high-pitched her sounds are. It's so much more high-pitched. Oh, it's so cute. I think she actually jumps higher too. Oh man, that's adorable. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you all. Definitely play Thomas Was Alone because it was a very innovative game for when it came out. I think it still holds up in terms of its like puzzle solving and gameplay, and I think it's a really good lesson for a lot of game developers, not even just sound designers, but it's definitely a really good lesson to take away. So anyways, come follow us on Twitter at Blipsounds, and come join the Discord server. It's at invite.gg/Blipsounds or in the description below. And we also have a free course on blipsounds.com that you can check out, where we go over Fmod and sound design and Reaper and Unity and a bunch of other different topics that you can learn sound design with and get started with it. But anyways, I hope this video is helpful for you all, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.